People like ContraPoints do not want to accept the fact that what they live under today is not capitalism, but are living under corporatism. And yes, I have pointed out so many times before that individualism is all about the freedom of the economy from government control, from any state control. That's what a capitalist system is. A capitalist system is a free market economy. It's not the mixed economy that America is living under today, where they try to combine capitalism and socialism together, and you end up with this corporatist system.
And this would be a grim state of affairs in any circumstances, but it's especially egregious in a country where many of the basic needs are not met. On the one hand, we have 40 million people living in this country with medical debt, spiraling tuition costs leading college students to take out loans they may never escape, more than 500,000 homeless people, and 13 million children who have to go to school hungry.
When you look at American healthcare costs of the late 19th century, or even the education costs in the late 19th century, education and healthcare was dirt cheap. The American healthcare system got so out of control because of the American Medical Association monopoly granted by the United States government, so it was the US government's fault. Trying to blame that on capitalism when it's the fault of government is unreal, and saying that, oh well, government has something to do with capitalism is absolute nonsense. And then going on to say that the over-regulation of the private sector by the US government is somehow capitalist is nonsense. Because again, capitalism is about the market that regulates itself. It's not about government regulation. It's about the market that regulates itself. It's about the free market. For example, interest rates in the marketplace being left to freely regulate itself in the marketplace through the laws of supply and demand. The same with the ratio of money. Or, for example, under capitalism, prices in the marketplace are regulated freely by the laws of supply and demand. That is what capitalism is about. Capitalism is not about government setting down that of quantity and quality controls, etc., and all the rest of this nonsense. And yes, the US government over-regulated the private sector. And there's about 49% private sector in the United States healthcare system. And last but not least on that issue, you have the third-party payer system. I've explained all of that and I'm not going to go into it, but a third-party payer system is anti-capitalist. Capitalism was about having the consumer free in the marketplace to freely shop around for the cheapest provider, with strong, fierce competition of private providers providing a service where the consumer can choose who they go to. That's not how the American healthcare system operates. The American healthcare system operates on that of a third-party payer system, whereby a third party in the background is the one with a monopoly over cost. It's a third party in the background that is the one driving the cost. They've got a monopoly over it. And who created that problem? Government. And what did that lead to? A collusion between private pharmaceutical companies, because you're living in the absence of a capitalist system. If you take away government intervention, if you take away the third-party payer system, the collusion disappears. It's destroyed because competition destroys it. Because you've got consumer choice then. And then you've got the same argument, even with regards to education. It's the same principle. It's all down to the laws of supply and demand. That's what determines the cost. The higher cost was a signal to tell you there's a shortage. That's because you've got a far greater demand of pupils wanting to get into those schools, and the demand is far greater than the placements available. Whose fault was that? That was the fault of the United States government. That's why the education soared through the roof in terms of the costs. Because of government. So it's no surprise why they've racked up all that student debt. And then on top of all of that, they're encouraging these students to go and study subjects that are worthless. Subjects like women's studies. How's that even going to get you a job? That's not even going to get you a job. All you've done is racked up, student debt. through studying something that's not even worth that to the marketplace. So they wasted money going to university when they don't need to. They could have easily have went and done an apprenticeship and done something that pays far more. And yes, there's a serious problem with how things are today. I agree there's a serious problem. But the problem is not the fault of capitalism. The problem is the very fault of people wanting more government. That is the problem. That was the problem to begin with.
And on the other hand, we apparently have the resources to mass produce $400 juice packet squeezing machines and $300 luxury ice cubes, and there are apparently Americans who are willing to spend $50 million on Barnett Newman paintings. I mean, it's a fine painting, it's got a lot of great red on it, but is it really worth the cost of feeding every homeless person in America for 2 weeks?
ContraPoints doesn't seem to understand individual liberty and individual choice. You know something, it's a bit like that argument they came up with, and they basically says that, oh, look at all those starving African people out there. All those poor starving Africans, and, they're dying of starvation. Meanwhile, you've got these fat Americans sitting there in McDonald's stuffing their face with burgers and stuff like that, as if to blame the obese American for the cause of why the African people are dying of starvation, as if it's the American people's fault. And that's the arguments that you'll honestly get. That's the problem with these arguments. How's it the fault of somebody going out and spending $300 on a particular item, or going out and spending a lot of money on something that they personally value? That's their free choice, what they want to do with their own money. This is what I don't understand about the mindset of these socialists, because that's their free choice. If they were, if they worked hard for their own money, that's their own choice what they want to do with it. However, that does not mean to say they do not care about people who are less fortunate. How do you know that the person who went and spent, $1,000 on a painting didn't the previous week go and put money into charity in some other form? How do you know that? You don't know that. You've got no way of reading that. You don't know what they're doing. I know people who go out and spend money all the time, and guess what? They actually invest money into charities to help people who are, less fortunate. I know people who do that. So this is the inherent contradiction. And the problem is, as a result of the mixed economy, as a result of the destruction of capitalism, because let's face it, you've already destroyed capitalism, right? Because you don't live under a capitalist system today. You've basically created the very problems that you're pissing and moaning about. For example, your extremely high cost of living, an extremely high cost of the private sector, and the problem with social security and the welfare state. That's right, as a result of the welfare state and social security, you basically destroyed the community spirit. That's what you destroyed. Do you know what the community spirit was? The community spirit was basically people banding together to go out of their way to provide for people charitably. That's what the community spirit was. See, as a result of government stepping in with the strong social security and all the big welfare statism, do you know what that did? It created a mentality in society where people now thought to themselves, oh, I don't need to, hand money to this homeless person because the government will do it for me. There you go. So basically, that was a result of the welfare statism and the social security, which has got nothing at all to do with that of the capitalist system, because the capitalist system is all about that of voluntary action through charitable operations.
Is this what an efficient economy looks like? If GDP is your only measure of efficiency, then maybe. But shouldn't the economy serve humanity rather than the other way around?
ContraPoints' assumption is that GDP determines the efficiency of an economy. I don't know who out there has said that. If someone has said that, they just don't understand economics. Maybe this person's thinking of Richard Spencer or someone similar to that in the alt-right, but That's not capitalism, and I'll explain to you the very reason why. First and foremost, Norway has got a very high GDP, and it got it off the back of the energy sector because they were, you know, they were the fifth largest oil exporter in Western Europe. That's the sign of an economy that is economically inefficient. Not efficient, it's inefficient. Why? Because it's tearing the arse out of natural resources. Natural resources are scarce, meaning they're finite. They don't last forever. They're not infinite, they're finite. So what's the purpose of the study of economics? We, as human beings, live on a planet with scarce natural resources. And the purpose of economics is to find the most efficient system possible. Right? So it's a question of, how do we better improve the material standards of living of the masses, whilst using the fewest resources as possible? That's efficiency. Efficiency isn't doing a Norway and tearing the backside out of North Sea oil. That's not efficiency. You take, for example, the Soviet Union under socialism, where the Soviet Union had a high GDP. That doesn't necessarily mean to say that you've got an efficient economy, just because you've got a high GDP. The high GDP could be a signal to say that you've been overproducing surplus waste. So, and it was no different. It was no different to that of Nazi Germany. That's why Nazism and fascism was such a failure. All those fascists out there who, have a go at the communists, they're just as bad. Nazi Germany was just as inefficient as that of, the Soviet Union. It was overproducing. It was producing what consumers were not in demand of.
Canto 4, Message to the Rich. Alright, you filthy goddamn reptiles, listen up. I have a pretty good barometer for internet politics, which is to say, politics. I mean, I noticed the alt-right thing pretty early, and you can assign as much or as little significance to that as you choose. But what I'm picking up at the moment is that people are getting fucking mad, and they're starting to get mad specifically at you, the rich. Recent polling data shows that a majority of adults under the age of 30 do not support capitalism, and almost a third support socialism. This is not the 80s anymore. You can't continue to get richer and richer while the rest of the country is underemployed, in debt, and unable to afford healthcare. And judging by the mood I'm picking up on social media right now, if you don't fix some shit and make life better for the masses, they are gonna cut your fucking heads off.
There are a lot of people who just don't understand economics, history and politics. And ContraPoints doesn't understand the late 19th century of American history. In fact, here's the special part. The rich people like that of John Davis and Rockefeller was the one who was actually greatly benefiting the poorest of society the most. It was through that kerosene that enabled people to light their homes at a far cheaper cost. And it was through capitalism, the competition, through the innovation of, the production and selling of the electric light bulb that enabled people to improve their material standards of living, to move away from the dangerous lighting of kerosene in their homes, replacing it with the electric light bulb. And the rich people in those days were continuously driving down the costs, so much so that between 1840 to 1900, the consumer price index continuously fell. The consumers of society, not only were their wages continuously increasing, the purchasing power of money was continuously increasing because of the gold standard, and most importantly, the whole of society was becoming richer. That was, of course, until the socialists got their hands on the economy.
But none of them so far has ended capitalism, and capitalism needs the state to maintain its power.
So there you have it. A complete misunderstanding of capitalism from ContraPoints, and sadly a lot of people buy into it. What this person is speaking about is economic fascism. They're speaking about corporatism. They're not speaking about capitalism.
Shouldn't we focus on protecting abortion and getting affordable healthcare and education and ending mass incarceration and other achievable goals? Why not just be honest about your political stance? Are you a democratic socialist, or would you actually support a revolution?
Mention something about democratic socialism and all the rest of this nonsense. Well, I've explained many times before, there's no such thing as democratic socialism, because the fact of the matter is, socialism is defined by central planning of the economy. And when you're faced with the knowledge problem and the economic calculation problem, you're screwed. Once the government destroys the information of prices through price controls, you land in a position where you no longer hold the needs and wants of people's needs and wants. And it leads to that of a self-serving government. So it's a choice whether they give up on socialism, or of course they continue down the road kind of like that of your kind of Stalin-esque, which is the only socialism that you will ever have. You either have the flavour of fascism or the flavour of, Marxism. Take your pick of tyranny. Anyway, folk, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I know it's been a bit of a long rant, but something, I thought I would go through the main arguments bit by bit, and I hope it's been informative for yourself. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask me, feel free to comment in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you for watching my video, and I shall talk to you later. Cheers.